Honourable Steve Chadwick.
Mr Speaker, look, we allowed that member opposite to walk along the sunny side of the street for a while, but we've been out there walking the streets. Actually, we're in opposition out there walking the streets, and we're hearing some very interesting things coming out of the shadows on the street. People are coming up to us now saying, we thought it was a bit of a jammy budget. It was pretty good. It was, spread around tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. It's all that National knows as a way forward to an aspirational future. But they're now going, not even 1 week later, hang on a minute, I've got into the calculator and it doesn't quite work out. It's all going to be wiped out by inflation increases. My little bit of jam is going to have a bit of bread splattered on it, and it will be wiped out on the bench before us. Also on the dark side of the street that we remember on this side of the House, people are starting to see already about asset sales. It was only the day after the budget, after they had their day in the sunshine, that Bill English came out and talked about, now we're getting geared up for asset sales. Kiwi Bank first off the rank. Then the Prime Minister said, don't do that, don't get too keen, too carried away and bask in the sun for too long and get too puffed up, especially 20 years, Chester. I think that's just more than the world could bear over 20 years of a Conservative government that has no plan, has no economic strategy other than tax cuts, and tax cuts. Well, I'm very pleased that the Speaker for Seniors is in the House. The Minister for Senior People is in the House today. Mr Carter sitting next to the... Well, we've been at a Grey Power meeting in Rotorua today. A big Grey Power meeting, and very, very positively received. They passed a resolution unanimously, not one vote against it, that they are adamantly opposed to asset sales. And the government needs to hear that message after they've walked along the sunny side of the street, because the storm clouds are brewing. They also realised that this sale is a direct attack on Kiwi wealth, a direct attack on the Kiwi dream that we all as Kiwis want to be proud of, and they were most unhappy today. This budget, Mr Speaker, was just a bit of a test it and see. It's a wait and see. Well, by this time next year, which interestingly enough, with the World Cup coming out, this time next year, everybody who goes to the supermarket is going to start to realise the impact of these tax cuts on their back pocket. They're going to see that bread goes up, milk goes up, cheese goes up. In fact, a lot of people only got a litre of milk in their tax cuts, and they're going to realise that that's been wiped out by inflation. So it's a bit of a wait-and-see budget, let's just see. But I believe by this time next year, with those that have done their reckoning, they're also realising that any gain is going to be wiped out. But worst of all, it is a budget of broken promises. And I think that's something that New Zealanders are starting to see with the smile and wave Prime Minister, with his front bench doing the damage as he goes around the country smiling and waving, that actually he has broken promise after promise. He said he wouldn't borrow for tax cuts. I would never borrow for tax cuts. What's $1 billion? What's $240 million this year to pay for the tax cuts that were given on one hand? He also said GST won't rise. Well, it's risen. And the seniors today at the Grey Power meeting got that message about broken promises. He also said that there would be caps on public services, and already has broken that with several cuts to public services. And they're frontline cuts. They're not just managers, and I'll get on to that in a minute. But also at the Grey Power meeting today, Mr Carter, they heard that the rates rebates has been cut by $58 million, and they were most unhappy about that. And they also learned that this is an interesting one, that their ability to borrow a student loan is gone too for seniors, and many of them really enjoyed keeping intellectually engaged, and now they can't afford to any longer. We also learnt that there's no contract in Rotorua for elder abuse, and aged concern are very, very worried about that. And what has the Minister done about that? Elder abuse contracts need to be given around the country. So these seniors are very, very worried about what this government is doing. Now, Mr Speaker, I want to talk about the impact from the cradle to the grave. And I feel here that what they have done with young families is very, very sad. We believe in education, we believe in skills development and a skills strategy, which was missing from this budget, but it is the impact of the cuts of $250 million on our early childcare education with the 23 hours for parents that is most cruel for families. An average family with 2 young children, and the member opposite talked about them with aspiration and hoping that they get into their own home, they will only benefit from this initially, and then they will be $55 a week worse off, $55 a week worse off if they have their children in early childcare, and it's quality early child education. It's education. It's the building blocks for kids going to school ready to learn, rather than this aspirational drive that they had on numeracy and literacy. Why did the first rung of the ladder get taken away from young parents who were trying to get on in society by cutting $250 million out of quality teacher-led 23 hours early child education? I think that's an indictment on how government values children and families. It's a disgrace, and parents are out there now working it out on their little reckoner on this budget and saying we are going to be $55 a week worse off. And that was the beginning building block for children to learn and get on in this society. So where's the money going to come from here? This huge cut to early child education funding means that parents are going to have to pay for it. They're going to have to meet the shortfall themselves from their own back pocket, as well as meet the shortfall on what food they need to put on the table to grow healthy children and keep them well and engaged in learning. So I feel that that is absolutely appalling. And I remember when we brought in that teachers before children in early childcare had to be qualified, and we weren't popular for that, but I congratulate Trevor Mallard for saying that children are our most vulnerable and therefore deserve the best in front of them, and every teacher in front of them in early childcare education, no parents will pay for it, $55 a week. And when members go out there and meet young parents in their constituency, they're going to realise that this was an appalling cut. Mr Speaker, I do want to say a little bit about arts. I'm the Arts, Culture and Heritage spokesperson, and I do hearken back to, I hear government saying, what did we do for 9 long years? Well, Helen Clark led a cultural recovery in the arts, and I have to say Chris Finlayson is really now at the stage of palliative care for the arts. There's nothing new, no new ideas. He's taken a little bit of money from New Zealand On Air and the Film Commission and put that over to Save the Film Archives. Great, but that's not new money. That's money taken off the creative industry and the creative sector to prop up Film Archive, which should have been new money, because those are New Zealand stories that we must keep in safekeeping for our children and our grandchildren. The other thing that he's done for the arts, and there's been no crowing about the arts, $5 million has come from where? Not an increase in baseline funding, but from lotteries. So he's got $5 million from lotteries, a bit of a creative switch across, to disperse to the creative community, and that's the only funding that the Arts, Culture and Heritage budget got. I do thank the Minister, and it's not common, but I thank the Minister for the 100,000 for the protection of